Do you often find yourself not really knowing what you want? And even if you do know what you want, somehow, if someone else expresses their wants, their needs, or their opinions strongly, you find yourself sort of going along with that, and you end up feeling like somehow you're living everybody else's life and not your own. Well, this absolutely sucks, and you deserve better. So today there's going to be some hard truths about why you might feel easily influenced by other people's opinions. So strap in, my friend, and let's get into it. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. We are at episode number 72. And as ever, you can find the show notes at www.beabrillianthuman.com/ then the number of the episode. So it'll be /72 for today. And wow, we're already in February. We've just had Valentine's Day as this episode goes out. The year is flying by. And I just want to let you know that we have now launched the MPA Advanced Training. You can go and have a look at that. You can find it at joelyoungmpa.com, or you can go to the mpaacademy.com/advanced and find out about that. If you're new to the show, you might be wondering what I'm talking about. MPA is something which starts as a simple 6-line process, which you can download for free also on any of the sites that we have, beabrillianthuman.com or joelyoungmpa.com or the mpaacademy.com. And in a way, it's going to be a perfect tool for you to have if you find that you're easily influenced by others. And you can download it for free, get hold of it. In a sense, it's a simple way to stop taking things personally, a simple process. But it's so much more than that. It's really a framework for living a resistance-free life, a non-stick life, as I often say. So if you find that other people's opinions stick to you all the time and you end up carrying them around like extra weight and baggage, MPA is a fantastic approach and tool and methodology for helping you to just let it slide off and coming into your own. Now, I did say in the intro there that it's going to be a day of hard truths, and that certainly is what it's going to be. Because if you're someone who's easily influenced by other people's opinions, then normally the strategies that we're employing to sort of get by in life, or that causes us to do that, they have a lot of what I would call secondary gains. There's a lot in it for us. There's a lot of safety, a lot of easiness. But if you are someone who has that, there's also the downside, which is you end up feeling like, you're not in charge of your life. And chances are, underneath the surface of the habits of those behaviors is you who kind of probably has a sense of wanting to know your own mind a lot better, because when you employ these strategies over time, you can start to feel very foggy about your wants and needs and what's important to you. And certainly, although we tend to deny it to ourselves, kind of afraid of really asserting those opinions if you have them. And you probably want to feel, a sense of being able to become confident about your decisions and your perspectives. Chances are there's a sense of invisibility about you. You might occasionally assert your preferences, your wants, your needs, but suddenly you just sort of capitulate and somebody else gets to have their way. So you want some kind of sense of control and purpose in your life. And it's a situation, if you're constantly feeling influenced by other people's opinions, where you end up feeling very disempowered, and you just want to get a sense of that sort of, how can I step into that empowerment, that certainty? And it's a really, really big issue, which is there for a lot of people. So that's what we're going to look at today. But as I say, it's Hard Truth Day, because when you had to, in order to look at this in the eye, in order to get to the nub of it, in order to really change it, we have to really look at what's going on in ourselves. What are we up to? What are the reasons for that? And what can we do to make it different? So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to get into it now. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. And I always like to say, if you like what you hear on the show, remember to go and tell someone about it. All right, let's pull back the curtain and get into this. So there's a great scene in the Jungle Book, the original animated Jungle Book, the Disney one. And it's the scene with the vultures. I don't know if you remember this, but the vulture, one of the first vultures says, you know, what do you want to do? And the next vulture replies, I don't know, what do you want to do? To which the first vulture goes, I don't know, what do you want to do? And it goes on and on and on. And that kind of points to what's really happening when you feel influenced by other people's opinions. Because underneath the surface, if you think about that conversation, I don't know, what do you want to do? It's like seeking for someone else to take the lead, for someone else to make the choice. Now, it's something that we deny to ourselves, but if you really look at why you're often influenced by other people's opinions, it's good to ask that question of yourself. Are you actually wanting someone else to take the lead, to make the decision? And why would you do that? Well, if you go ahead and make the decision, that requires a commitment on your part to your perspective, to your choice and your opinion. And that really is the nub of what's going on here. Is when we really look at it, we have to look at our own fears of what it would mean if we actually showed up and became present to what our choices are. But the thing about this is when we do this strategy, and let me just lay out kind of how it really works and see if you recognize this. So the main strategy is don't commit. Don't commit to a particular perspective, opinion, decision, want, need. Don't commit to it. This main strategy is to wait, right? We wait for others to or we wait until we can check. Sometimes we do that sort of energetically or sort of sensory. We check the room, we check the crowd, we check our partner. What do they maybe want? What's in it? You know, what do they want to go? Because then we want to agree with that so that we can kind of make ourselves less visible, not sort of put ourselves in a place where we could be challenged or confronted. And so we can agree and therefore go along and be an easygoing, nice, go with the flow kind of person. And that's the general strategy. So it's like, don't commit, just wait, check what others are going on, then agree with that. Now, if we have a preference within ourselves, we don't actually look into ourselves about what we want and need. We do have kind of an idea of what our preferences are. Then, we might wait and check. And if what comes back our way doesn't suit us, then we might make a hint. We go into some kind of, and let's face it, we're going to be honest today, we go into our passive control mode. So we make a hint or sort of, oh, maybe that's not so good, or maybe this would be better, or we try and sort of but what we're still waiting, because from our hints, what we want to happen, here's the horrible truth. We want someone to kind of pick up on that and then make that suggestion, really for them to take responsibility for our preference. So we're still not quite taking responsibility for it. And that can escalate, if that gets really bad, where we're really kind of inwardly committed to what we want, get our hooves in, then that's where passive aggression can come into play. You can become very passive aggressive, because passive aggression is all about not taking responsibility for a decision. It's getting someone else to step into to what we want, but we have to push them around without really just saying, this is what I want, this is this is what I need, this is what I want to do, whatever it is. It's like, but that passive aggressive thing can come in, but they're all kind of different levels or extensions of the same basic strategy, which is not to commit, not to stand in ourselves. But the thing is, when you do that, is there is a kind of a polarity that happens where even if we have that knowing of what we want and we don't stand up for it, at some point we probably are going to capitulate. We're probably going to sort of just not go with it. If there's too much confrontation or the person is very clear in what they want, at some point we're going to just, stand down on our own, if we have them, on our own perspectives, our own desires, our own needs. And one of the things about that is that it can make us very easy to be manipulated. Think about it. If you're constantly waiting for someone else's opinion and you meet someone who has very strong opinions, and we're not really able to sort of stand and be clear in our own perspectives, then we can become prey to the sort of more manipulative people. So a lot of people who have this kind of people-pleasing, non-confrontational, easygoing kind of way, they're often the people that are preyed upon by the likes of narcissists, who love that because they can spot the passive aggressor and they don't care. And they've got lots of clever ways to, even if you get an inkling of empowerment, they'll twist it up and bring you back to that insecure place where you're not really sure that you're entitled to, or it's the right decision, or all of those things that plague you, so that they can always get what they want. And so really, if you live in this world, you can end up rather sadly becoming sort of passive and resentful and very unclear in who you are and what you want. And the resentfulness is worth talking about, because that's what ultimately happens. Deep inside that place with you. I mean, we're a lovely, easygoing, nice flowing person. I know, we know that. Yeah, but inside, let's talk about the inside. Inside, the resentment boils, doesn't it? I never get to have my own way. He never listens to me. She never listens to me. Why do they always get what they want? I never get what I want. That's what we do, folks. That's what happens on the inside. But, I'm laughing because I do like to laugh at our wonderful, crazy, self-harming strategies, because they are kind of ridiculous when you think about it, but they're very real as well. And we can end up feeling like we're very, very weak. We feel like we're unimportant. There's that insecurity. We can even come off insecurity. We can come off as needy. And ultimately, there's kind of a fear that's underlying it. And the other thing about it is we can end up taking other people's opinions very personally. So if someone says, said something about your opinion, it can really cut deep, because that's really a reflection of our own sense of insecurity. We're very insecure when we are like this. We're very insecure about our own opinions, about what matters to us, because there's like that underlying sort of sponsoring idea that, what matters to me doesn't really matter. So why would I assert it? And if I do assert it, what's going to happen? So I'm not going to bullshit you here. If you want to change this, the chances are, and when I see it in my practice, and certainly in my own experience with myself, often it's a very deep-rooted, almost like it's part of your identity that you've built since you were very, very young. So it's not something that's going to necessarily change overnight. It's something that you're going to need to really, first of all, really acknowledge what game you're up to. And then you're going to have to step into a place where you take a different attitude, because that non-committal waiting and checking strategy is something which is, well, certainly in my experience, kind of eating away at your soul in some way. So let's get into sort of how to do that. Let's get into some practical sides of it. What's really going on? We have to look at that. And then how can you go about beginning to sort of untangle the infestation with this energy, if you like? How can you go about really addressing it in a way that starts to tip you towards a sense of certainty, empowerment, knowing your own mind, and that confidence in standing strongly and visibly in your perspective, your decisions, your wants, your needs, and what really matters to you? So if I was to boil this down to a sentence, what's really at the heart of all this is that you're really afraid of standing in you, of becoming visible, of becoming responsible for your opinions and your expressions. And underneath that is that will make you open to conflict and contradiction. So showing up in the world is something, I'm going to use a generalization. It's not always true, but many of the people that I know of that have this as a kind of underlying trait within their personality have often been raised in families where there's a lot going on, a lot of conflict often, and often, in many ways, a lot of it is the fear of conflict itself. But the idea that they translate their world into is that, if I show up, if I become visible, if I express an opinion, I'm only going to be adding to the conflict, the drama, the abrasion that I'm experiencing in my family. And normally, again, this is why often they're preyed on by, narcissists and the like, is because there's a really golden heart in there that just wants peace, that just wants there to be a sense of harmony. And the sensitivity to the absence of that harmony, what they end up doing is saying, well, I will be the sacrificial lamb. I will suppress my own wants and needs in order to not add insult to injury, to not add more into the equation. But it becomes, over time, as these things often do, there's kind of a very positive intent underneath it. But often over time, it becomes then a strategy upon which we build our sense of who we are. So it becomes that the idea of being visible or responsible becomes very, very scary. So that sense of that sort of that inability to step into yourself, what it does over time is that you begin to mistrust yourself to stay strong and capitulate, because your sense is that if you do assert yourself and it is contradicted or it is met with conflict, then you know your own strategy. Your strategy is going to be just back down, become passive. And that is a very vicious cycle, which undermines our self-esteem and undermines our sense of confidence and undermines our willingness to go back and try again to become more visible. So this is kind of where that fear comes from, the fear of standing you, because it can feel very hopeless. It can become very depressing, and life can start to feel like it's hollowed out and meaningless, and it's just you're just doing things that don't necessarily suit you, but you're so desperately afraid to actually stand in it because of all this stuff that's going on. And then we're afraid of being held accountable. Now, it's kind of the same thing, but I want to use that word accountable because it's difficult to admit to ourselves, but being held accountable for our decisions is also something that we become scared of. Why? Because we've practiced being passive and we've practiced not asserting our opinions in the past. And the secondary gain, I mentioned there are a lot of secondary gains. The secondary gains of that is we don't have to actually stand in that kind of adult aspect of ourselves. We can stay kind of young somewhere inside and just be taken care of. Although, of course, it doesn't work. These strategies are bullshit. But somehow that's the wiring that we've got inside of ourselves. So we become afraid of being accountable, because if we're accountable, we can be questioned. If we can question, there's a possibility of conflict. And then it goes back into that. Then you capitulate. Then you feel bad. Then you feel like it confirms that nothing you think, want, or need matters anyway. It's dreadful. And even underneath that, really, in some senses, can be a sense of fear of abandonment or rejection. Going back to the sort of childhood setup that's often there for this kind of strategy, it can be that, if I do assert myself in this already warring community that's called a family, then, our parents won't have time for me. I mean, I've heard things like people will say that their parents kind of said, well, if you're going to be this trouble, you can just leave if they do ever assert themselves, or, you kids are hard work, and, they get the message that kids are hard work and too much, and it's hard being a parent. And the little kid just goes, well, I have to be as small and, unobtrusive as possible. But underneath that is that if I am going to assert anything, then the family might fall apart, or, which is terrifying for a young kid. Or literally it just is, I'll just be rejected and left alone. So in that child's world, what it translates to is, when that strategy continues through into adulthood, is a general fear of abandonment. So it can translate into personal relationships where, you don't want to say what you want or need with some new partner, because then they might reject you or abandon you or not like you. So it's a real risky thing to actually say, well, this is what I want, this is what I believe, this is what's true for me, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't, because all of those things are at play. So what the hell do you do? Well, you don't commit, you wait and you check for others. Then it's all nice and safe, but you feel empty and shit inside. No, that's not the way. So here's the kind of the tough pill to swallow. Ultimately, you've got to bust those myths, and that's going to take committed practice. You bust the myths by changing the strategy, by beginning to learn how and actually standing in your wants and needs and your boundaries. Because again, boundaries are something which it's really symptomatic of this kind of strategy, is people with poor boundaries. I mean, that's exactly why I did the Boundary Bootcamp, which is wonderful program that I say wonderful because I love the impact that it has. Boundary Bootcamp, which you can find, I'll actually link it in the show notes as I'm now talking about it, but you can go to the mpaacademy.com/boundary-bootcamp, both lowercase, and watch the video I've got there and have a look. It's like and it will give you this, it's a 4-week course. So over those 4 weeks, you get to really look at things in the eye and what's going on, and untangle the knots. I'll give you some amazing tools to untangle the knots, and then get into how you build healthy boundaries. And then we look at how you deal with that conflict that you're going to meet in the world. So in a way, now I think about it, it's a perfect program if this is an issue for you. So go check it out. The mpaacademy.com/boundary-bootcamp, or go to the show notes, www.beabrillianthuman.com/72 for today, and find the link there, and have a look at it. Anyway, I've lost my track. Where was I? Yes, so committed practice is important. And one of the ways that we overcome what that is, because again, I mentioned that one of the things that can happen, this is very true in boundaries as well, is we get into the habit of capitulating. We sort of have that moment of, I can do this, I can say what I want, and then we meet conflict and then we capitulate. So you've got to find a way to overcome the downward spiral that creates. And the best way that I've found to do that is to frame it as self-discovery, to frame it as exploration, to sort of really sit with yourself and make a decision, to think of it as experimentation. Within experimentation, there's an expectation of failure, but that's not something which is going to stop you moving forward. And the thing with this strategy is that the strategy is, if I fail, it just confirms what I've always believed, which is that I don't matter anyway. So you have to kind of really make that inner decision that you're going to practice this. And in order to sort of overcome that negative spiral, you have to say, well, it's going to be a self-discovery. There are going to be times when I practice saying what I was going to say, and I'm going to just, let myself down like I normally do. But there are going to be times when I find actually it isn't met with confrontation. It isn't met with those things. I mean, one of the things about people who experience this in relationship is the other partner who knows what they want is just as frustrated as the person who is not willing to say what they want, because the partner is going, just tell me what you want. I want you to have what you want as much as I have. I want to hear who you are. It's like, who are you anyway? So that's why I call it myth busting. This is busting the myth, because you might find that if you're with a partner and you're doing this and you start saying, well, actually, this is what I want. They go, oh, fantastic. Let's do that. And occasionally they'll say, oh, no, I don't really want to do that. And then sometimes you'll go, oh, damn, that means I don't matter. I'll just capitulate and feel resentful. And sometimes you might just go, well, actually, it's important. And you figure it out. You start to stand in who you are. And the other way that I think is really important to to address this is you have to really, and it will really underpin that decision, that commitment to change, is you've got to look at the personal cost of the old strategy, and you've got to look at the personal gain of changing. So in terms of looking at the personal cost, you're going to have to face, what really happens when you deny your own opinions, what really happens inside of you, and how does it affect your life when you just end up being influenced by other people's opinions. It might be that you end up feeling really weak or unimportant. You can look at the needy traits that come on the back of it, the cost of the resentment that feels like inside of you. So it's to really sort of get down on paper, what does it cost you to keep going with this, and what will it cost you if you keep doing this? I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week. As you go down the line, what's that going to cost you if you're on your deathbed, and you've always just been influenced by other people, and it's only got worse, and the resentment's built and built and built, all that stuff. Just look at what that's going to cost. But then you've also got to look at what is the gain, what's the benefit. If I start to take Joel's advice and commit to changing this by a time of exploration, being in the laboratory, just literally overcoming the fear and speaking up, being willing for it to be messy, so that once in a while I get a breakthrough, and each breakthrough has that positive upward spiral, that every time that you speak up and it actually works, it builds your confidence. Every time that you speak up and it's met by confrontation or conflict and you stand in it anyway, you build that self-trust, the trust that you've lost. You start to rebuild it. Trust takes time and experience. But if you do that, just see yourself going into your life ahead, and you start to break down and start to imagine your life if you were comfortable with really powerfully and effortlessly expressing your own opinion. Again, in Boundary Bootcamp, we call it what matters to you, what doesn't, what works for you, what doesn't. That's the essence of a boundary, is being really clear on it and being willing to state it. And having strong boundaries means you don't end up feeling like, you're a doormat being walked over, or a mug who just keeps giving in to other people. Instead, if you start having strong boundaries, if you start being the influencer rather than the influenced, then there's a magic of self-assertion, self-confidence. I'm not talking about arrogance or ending up being, one of those arseholes you don't like, you're just throwing their weight around. But it's just really just including yourself in that equation of what matters. So those are the three things that I suggest, is you've got to commit to busting the myths with a practice. You can frame it as self-discovery, as an exploration where failure is kind of expected, but actually just part of the refinement process. And it also really helps you if you look at the cost of what you're currently doing and look at the gain of the change. Now, you take this away. I want you to really take this away and think of this as an option. And if you decide to do it, which I hope you do, don't do it because you're influenced by what I say, right? Do it because you find that place in you. It starts with how you respond to this. Do it with finding that place in you where you are congruently deciding this is a path that you want to take, because you understand that you have had enough of being the way you're being. You deserve better. And that you're willing to commit to a practice that will make your life change beyond belief. All right. Well, that's it for today. I hope you found this insightful, got some awareness on yourself. Let me know. This goes out. There'll be posts about this on social media, so you can comment there. Generally, I'm at Joel Young MPA on places like Twitter or where else am I? That Instagram. You can find me on the MPA page, MPA Rocks. Just search MPA Rocks on Facebook, and you can always leave me a message directly on the beabrillianthuman.com website. You can leave a voice message there, get in touch, or you can even email me. Let me know, how did this episode affect you? What's your experience of this? And my email, by the way, is joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. Get in touch. If you like it, make sure you go and tell someone about it. I'd love that. And your subscriptions to this podcast help those wonderful algorithms know that this is a show that is valued by at least somebody. I know there's lots of you out there, but the more that subscribe, the more that these wonderful algorithms tell other people about them and that kind of stuff, which I love, because I do believe in the messages that I share, and I do hope that they benefit more and more people every week as we go forward. And I will put links, as I've mentioned, Boundary Bootcamp. I do think if there's something that resonates with you, embedded within the Boundary Bootcamp program is really everything that I've talked about in terms of it will be a structure which will help you commit to that change. It's framed as boundary change, but fundamentally it goes to the heart of being influenced by other people. And also within it, there's information about MPA. And you can also, again, MPA is a great tool that will help to unpick the identifications, because it's identity level change with MPA. Help unpick identifications that are those deep-rooted duping strategies within you. It really works at a great level. And again, on the show notes, I'll do a link so you can download the free sheet. And if you want to go that route, come through the training track, which is start with basic training, then go to advanced training to really get the benefit of MPA. But go ahead and do that. Again, Boundary Bootcamp, I'll give you the distinct URL here. So I've said it a few times, it will hopefully stay in, but it's the npaacademy.com/boundary-bootcamp lowercase. Go there. It's a great program that will give you that structure. And it will be also a symbol of your commitment to changing this. And I know that you will benefit from doing that. Right, that's me. I've wibbled on enough at the end here. Have a fantastic week. I will see you next time. Until then, all that remains is to cue the moo.